Well, welcome from a gloriously hot and sunny England at height of summer. I'm afraid there's pretty strong summer breeze today, so you may not be able to hear me well, but let's hope so. Now today I'd like to give a general walk around this vehicle, something I haven't done before. It may look like an expedition vehicle, but actually it's much more than that. It's a multi-function vehicle, and going on expeditions is just one of its roles. I use it, for example, for transporting other vehicles. Here I'm taking the Disco to a workshop and transporting building materials and construction equipment around the place. Here I'm taking big load to the south of France, and I've done dozens of trips to my olive grove in the south of Portugal, a round trip of nearly 5,000 kilometers. So as I say, this is much more than just being an expedition vehicle. And because of the multi-role, some compromises have to be made, but it still works okay. Now the first thing you'll notice about the vehicle is the huge roof rack. When I bought it, I was very inexperienced. I bought a Defender 90, and for what I want to do, I should probably have bought a 110 or even a 130, but I didn't know any better. So space inside is very limited, and often things have to go up top. But actually that isn't such a bad thing, because you're often carrying things, dirty, smelly things, which you don't really want inside the vehicle. We'll come on to that later. The rack itself, it's a good old-fashioned brown church roof rack, as tough as hell. It's got these struts which go down to the lower bodywork and carry a lot of the load, and it relieves the load on the aluminium gutters, which are known to be a weak point on these vehicles. Well, I'm on the roof rack here. As I said before, space is at a premium, so I tried to keep things as compact as possible. The tent I have, it's an Auto Home overcamp tent. It's the smallest and cheapest tent they do, simplest, hasn't even got a separate fly sheet or changing area, but absolutely bloody excellent. It keeps me dry. I've had it about 20 years and I wouldn't change it. I have these boxes here, lightweight aluminium boxes made by Metallics UK, beautifully made, highly recommended. And I tend to throw things in here which I'd rather not have inside. So things like fuel funnel, when you've used that for diesel, you don't want that inside the vehicle. Got the volcano kettle, got the barbecue charcoal, and of course the barbecue set. If you've done a muddy recovery and the strops are all messy, and things like muddy boots. And these are all the sorts of things you don't want to have inside the vehicle. Now you'll notice I've decked it out with lightweight GRP grating, and it's an absolutely excellent solution. It's very lightweight, it's completely corrosion free, and you can fasten things down anywhere. Of course, the roof rack manufacturers have their own modular systems, which I think are an absolutely piss poor design. They're very expensive. You've only got limited fixing down points, so you very often can't pack the items in efficiently, and you're tied into their own proprietary fittings, which are usually very expensive. Now when I'm in working mode, this area down the centre gets used for anything. I throw chainsaws, bags of fertilizers up here. When I'm in expedition mode, I usually use it for carrying firewood, because in many places you're not allowed to pick up firewood and you have to carry your own. And again, ideal place, and you don't want firewood inside the vehicle. Extra fuel. Now this vehicle has two built-in fuel tanks. I can carry about 105 litres, and in all but the very worst terrain, that's good enough for 650, maybe 700 kilometres. But just occasionally you need to have longer range. Now because it's only a Defender 90, there's not space for the sill tanks, and the only place you can put extra fuel is up top here. And I've got two front runner jerry can carriers, and I can carry an extra 80 litres up here. Now it would be said quite correctly that the last place that you want to put a big heavy weight is on the roof of the vehicle. And in general, that's true. But to put it into context, this is a very unusual situation. It's very temporary. And obviously, if I've got a big fuel load up here, I'm going to be driving extra carefully. I'm not going to put a lot of fuel up here and immediately tackle, say, the Van Zils Pass. And also, as you're driving along, as you're burning up the fuel, you'll be progressively draining down these jerry cans. Now, in most filling stations, the fuel hoses will reach up here, so you don't have to manhandle the cans downstairs in order to fill them. And likewise, when you want to decant the fuel, if you've got a siphon pump with a nice long hose, you can reach straight down to the main tank. It's actually quite convenient. Now, starting at the front of the vehicle, first question is, well, where's the winch? And the simple answer is there isn't one. And this is a personal decision. Now, if you go off-road at the weekends, you like challenging the vehicle, getting bogged down, winching yourself out, that's absolutely great. But doing an extended overland trip, the considerations are quite different. And in my opinion, if you have a winch, it tends to lull you into a sense of false security, and you start taking risks which you probably shouldn't take. And if you find you're getting out of your depth, the going is getting harder and harder, and you're worried about getting bogged down, you should stop immediately, turn around, go back and find an alternative route. The worst thing is if you are relying on a winch to get you out and it's not there when you need it. Typical situation, go into the desert, get bogged down in soft sand or bull dust, and there's nothing to winch against. Also, I've seen far too many cases of winches failing on friends' vehicles. And the fact is that even though they buy very good quality kit, when you've got a difficult recovery, they're very often just not up to the job. And the sorts of winches you buy over the counter bear absolutely no relation to the type of kit I used to deal with in the oil and gas industry. Well, having finished that little diatribe against using winches on overland trips, what do I do? Well, I've got a high lift jack here which I carry low down on the front bumper, a couple of waffle boards, I've got pickaxe and spade on the rear door, I've got the usual strops and shackles, and on the few occasions when I do get bogged down, I always find that I can get myself out. I can't remember the last time I needed external assistance. Last little detail at the front, I have a radiator muff. Obviously it's normally tucked well out the way. Have it for two reasons. Firstly, on occasions I do go to colder regions and it's very useful to keep the engine at operating temperature. But also when I go deep wading, it's ideal to create a bow wave and to keep the water level in the engine compartment much lower. I know you can use blankets and things like that, but the radiator muff is really very much more efficient at this. On the left hand side of the vehicle, starting at the top, Fox wing awning. This is a 270-degree design, so it goes around and covers the back door as well. People often don't know where to store the poles. I keep these in a bit of plastic pipe under the roof rack, well out the way, but always ready to hand when you need them. Couple of charging points, both for solar panels and for mains hookup. LED work light with a waterproof switch. I've had a lot of problems with these switches, which aren't as waterproof as they claim, probably made in China. And then for the rear window, obligatory security grille, but also inside I've got this reflective insulation, and this makes a hell of a difference to the temperature inside. And lastly, on all of the doors I've got these very heavy duty hasps where I've put huge padlocks, and it acts as a good deterrent. We'll have a quick look inside the back. I'm sorry, the lighting conditions are very challenging, so it's difficult to get a good shot, but I hope you can see. At the top I have a string net. I put all of the bedding, sleeping bags, linen up there, I find that string net works much better than an elasticated cargo net, which bounces around too much. And on the right hand side I've got an equipment shelf where all the electronic stuff goes. At the front, if you can just see it beneath its black cover, there's 40-litre built-in water tank. I also carry 10 litres here, so I've got 50-litre water capacity. And back here I've got a couple of aluminium storage boxes built in. I put things like spares, tools, lubricants, recovery equipment, shackles, things like that. The heavy dirty stuff which you want out of the way and as low down as possible. On the right hand side I've got the compressor fridge. Now this is an Indel B. It's a little bit cheaper than an Engel, but importantly it uses the Danfoss compressor, which is the gold standard for these things. Now a useful detail, I can open the lids here and it doesn't interfere with the fridge. These boxes made up to a special design by Metallics UK and they work very well. I much prefer them to a drawer system. The drawers I find to be heavy and expensive, and they use up a lot of space as well because of the drawer mechanism. And I find that the aluminium boxes are actually, for me, a much better solution. Internal storage. Well, I use these boxes. They're made by the really useful company. They're stacking boxes, available in a range of different sizes. They're not expensive, they're adequately robust. You can chip the lids, but if you do so, you can easily buy new ones. They cost about £2.50 each. And I do like to be able to see inside, see what the contents are. Saves me having to open all the boxes one by one. Now I've often been told I really ought to go for the Wolf boxes in order to be considered a real overlander, but I just don't get it. They cost about 3 times as much, they're manufactured in black, so you can't see what's inside. I know they're really strong, and indeed it's been told to me that you can even drive your vehicle over them, but I can't honestly remember the last time I needed to drive my vehicle over a storage box. So in the meantime I'll stick with these little things. I don't use tie downs. It's often claimed you need to have very strong lashings, but if your boxes are jumping around to that extent, it means you're doing serious damage to the vehicle. I wedge these in good and tight, and I've got a packing system for that, and if I hear the boxes starting to move, I back off because I know I'm travelling too fast. The most obvious mod at the back of the vehicle are these gas bottle holders. Now I looked long and hard to see what you could buy, and I have to say I found all the commercial offerings, in my opinion, they were overpriced and badly designed. So I made these up myself. And I think they're far better made, very robust, much better than anything you can buy online. Now at the end of the day, when you finish travelling, the way I run it is I immediately jump out and set up the camp, and my travelling partner then gets on with the cooking. And the last thing that the cook wants to do, and particularly if she's a lady, is to climb up onto the roof rack in order to unbolt the gas bottles and get them down. Here it's very simple. You just take out the padlock or the retaining pin, a couple of turns on the butterfly nut, this opens up and away you go. Regarding security, I could have welded this all up, but at the moment it's bolted. However, everything has lock nuts, they're nipped up tightly, and if someone wants to steal these gas bottles, you'll find that there are 3 different sizes of nuts, and so you've got to come with the right combination of 6 spanners in order to disassemble it. And if you do that, well, you're welcome to take the gas bottle. A quick look inside the cab. I use a RAM mount system. At the moment I'm carrying a tablet there, but depending on the requirements of the trip, Using the same system, I can use the CB radio, or I can put in the Iridium satellite phone. Purely depends on where I'm going and what my communications requirements are. Loads of charging points, dash cam, sat nav, got a cradle in the center where I have a laptop where I run other navigation software. I think it's fair to say that this vehicle has very good navigation capabilities and is also well connected to the outside world. There's a dog guard between the cab and the rear compartment. It means the rear compartment's a secure lockable area, and also if ever there's a big accident, the gear at the back won't come flying through to the front to injure the driver and the passenger. Behind the driver's seat there's a little safety area. And mounted on the grille I've got a multi-pocket organiser. I try to throw all of the loose items there to keep the cab tidy. My one concession to luxury in the vehicle is I've got a very nice 4-speaker Alpine audio system and a couple of the speakers mounted on this rear bulkhead. And beneath the speakers you'll see the little radiator which comes as part of the winterizing kit. Very useful in colder climates. I have to use every last spare corner in this vehicle. So behind the driver's seat there's compressor permanently mounted with a long hose which goes to the 4 corners of the vehicle, the big telescopic bottle jack, 220 volt outlet, and oh yes, some more USB charging points. Now the compressor, it's called a truck air. I bought it about 15 years ago as a result of a testing magazine. It was the cheapest model which did the job and showed no signs of overheating. Only paid £40 for it. I was uninitiated back then. I didn't realise you were supposed to spend more than £400 on a massive setup with a 0.5 kilowatt motor. I keep promising myself that I'll upgrade when this one burns out. But the fact is it's still going strong after 15 years, so I guess I'll keep it. The vehicle is very well instrumented. Got ammeters, voltmeters covering both batteries, temperature, pressure gauges, you name it. And the philosophy here is you need to know what's happening and to spot problems ahead of time. Well, I hope that was of interest and gave you some insight into what it takes to build a vehicle like this. The work never stops. I've owned this vehicle best part of 2 decades, and yet every time I go away, when I come back, I've always got a work list, things to be improved. The work I do, I'm not making any significant upgrades, mainly to do with quality and reliability, and sometimes some mods to make it a bit more convenient. Now, one point I would make, and I'm not in particular a Land Rover fanboy. I drive it not because it's the best vehicle, but because it's the most practical one to do. I'm fully aware of the faults and deficiencies of these vehicles, but living in the UK, if you want a hard-working utility vehicle or an expedition vehicle, you're far better off starting with a Land Rover than any other marque. And that's because of the availability of vehicles, of parts, accessories, mechanics, specialist workshops, you name it. And if I lived in a different part of the world, I would probably drive something quite different. Now, owning a Land Rover is quite an odd experience. Online, there's so much negativity and negative comments which are posted. A lot of it comes from people whom I would class as being ignorant smartasses, but also a few so-called experts, and I think they like to boost their reputation by publishing controversial opinions. However, on the road, it's quite a different story. I find nothing but positivity, and I'm always amazed at the number of compliments I receive. You're driving along, and other drivers pull up and they wave at you, they give you the thumbs up. And when I'm parked somewhere, people approach me and start talking. They're really interested to know about the vehicle and say it's really great to see a classic vehicle like this still going strong. And on several occasions, people have literally come over waving bundles of cash, wanting to buy it there and then. One memorable occasion, I was in southern Italy and 4 guys came over. I think they were mafiosi, and that was actually quite a scary moment. I'll be on my travels again. If there's anyone out there who recognises me or the vehicle, more than happy if you come over and introduce yourselves and have a chat. See you around.